It is my pleasure to introduce to you Caitlin Metzger. You Can Vote's Deputy Director here in North Carolina. Caitlin joined us in 2017 and has been through a lot of the whiplash changes to voting in North Carolina and growth of You Can Vote. Caitlin's been through it all. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin. My video so you can just start it again.
Okay. All right. Hey everyone, good morning. Thanks Gloria and Jen for getting us started to talk about what are we doing in 2023. My catchphrase here is it's going to be great. We're going to do our best. We're going to work really hard. We are going to talk to more people than we did last year, hopefully. So what is our strategy this year? We are behaving like 23 is 24, right? This is something that we kind of embraced in 2019 as we headed into 2020. And this helps us realize that everything we do this year is going to help all voters next year, just as Jen was just talking about. So how are we going to do that? First, we're going to use local elections as a practice to build that habit, just like Jen was talking about. There are elections coming up in Charlotte, Durham, Wilmington, Jacksonville, Greenville, High Point, Cary. There's hundreds of municipalities with elections this fall. And so we are preparing to use that as a practice ground, as well as to build that habit of voting in these places that do get a chance to vote this year. Next, we're going to get to know and understand our Board of Elections and Board of County Commissioners, City Councils. We are right now in the local budgeting process. Many places have already met or proposed their local budgets. And why is that important for us? As one part is just because that's how municipalities work, and we can nerd out on that. But elections are involved in those budgets, right? The county commissioner, county commissions make those budgets, pass those budgets, allocate those money to the county boards of elections. That's happening right now. So if you're in the supporters of some of our other partners like Common Cause who have been leading the fight for this, now's the time to get very familiar with that budget process in your local community and understand that what's happening in 23 is directly impacting 24, because that budget right now that they're passing this summer will cover the primary, which is just 1 year away from tomorrow. We are preparing voting changes, including new maps. Remember, we have new maps coming on the congressional and legislative level this year. We expect lots of new rules, maybe changes to absentee voting, maybe changes to early voting, maybe changes to registration. We also expect photo ID. And how are we going to handle this? Pro tip, we got to talk to people, right? And so as Jen talked about, this is really our job in 2023 is to talk to people, find people, get them registered, help them turn out and vote in 23 if they have the opportunity. Everyone that we talk to is a chance to have a conversation with a voter, because at You Can Vote, we don't just register voters, we're educating people with every conversation. So if you have a fridge card in your hand, you can use that to guide people through the conversation, make sure they know how to look themselves up, make sure they know the municipal voting dates coming up this fall, make sure they know that the primary is just around the corner, March 5th of next year. We're also expanding our communications team, and we are getting ready to educate the public and probably make changes, right? If you've been with You Can Vote for a while, it is just on the cusp of a new voting change as soon as we order new fridge cards. So whenever we order our next big bulk of fridge cards, a new rule will appear overnight. We are used to this. We've done this several times in the past. And it is part of our strategy in 23 to get ready to be flexible, right? To expand that muscle, our own muscle memory of being able to turn on a dime. That has happened before and we have done it before. We are expected to do it again this year. And that's why we need your help to make sure that even if you have a conversation today with someone, you can tell them you came to our webinar, you learned something new. And if you see them again in a couple months, you can probably have another conversation. Something else will have changed since then. And so going back to that last pro tip, we got to keep talking to people. We got to expand who we're talking to, and we got to make sure to use the positive language to help folks feel educated and empowered. All right, so capacity building. What are we doing that you can vote? So more on a local level here within the organization, as well as the broad scale work in North Carolina. Activate is our high school programming. We are going to prepare thousands of new voters for voting in 2024. If you've gotten our weekly emails or come to our other training webinars, you may have met Lauren Sale, who does our Activate workshops in high schools. This is where we do interactive educational workshops and offer voter registration, but the bulk of it is the Activate program. And that's where we're making a lot of connections and having conversations with young voters, because again, just like Jen said, we got a lot of young voters across North Carolina that are 17 right now, will be 18 next year, or they're turning 18 this year and will get to vote this fall. We're also attending those Board of Elections meetings. We're addressing local barriers in voting to inform the county board's voter outreach. There was just a presentation last week, or maybe 10 days ago, from the State Board of Elections director. And she's already talking about how are we going to educate voters across the summer for what's coming up next year. Remember, we're going to have new maps. We're probably going to have ID. We may have changes to early voting. When you can attend those Board of Elections meetings, you get an insider look at what they're discussing, what issues matter to them on a local level. Another pro tip, if you live in a county with a college campus, you're going to need to go to those Board of Elections meetings. Because when we talk about voter access and accessibility, one of the main things we can do to help young voters vote more easily is get them an early voting site on or near campus and make sure they know that it's there. Those decisions are made right in your county, right? That's always a local level decision that your Board of Elections is talking about. If not right now, pretty soon, they're going to be making those local plans. We're also going to expand the outreach and deepen the partnerships with Justin's involved individuals. As Gloria mentioned, her work in the eastern part of the state, as well as in many of our other counties, we've connected with the reentry councils and the organizations supporting people as they return home. With the great news last year that we saw an expansion of eligibility, we're going to continue those relationships and even deepening those relationships, because if something changes, we want to be able to share that information and make sure that folks have the latest, the greatest, the fact-based information, because we also know that sometimes when a change like that happens, the way the news covers it causes confusion. And what we want to do is make sure to have trusted relationships and trusted messengers to make sure that the fact-based information is what really bubbles up to the top. So we're going to be using 23 to expand those relationships and deepen those connections so that if something changes, whether it's about eligibility or photo ID, that we can share that information and make sure that we are making sure that folks know the latest information. Just like I mentioned, like Gloria talked to this young individual just this month or last month, something might change in a year. So we got to make sure that we have access to have those conversations ongoing. Another thing we're working on this year is to identify and develop campus and community leaders. We're going to be holding more workshops on college campuses, some forums and listening sessions, as well as our ongoing voter outreach. So I know we're going to talk about our fellows program in just a bit, but those young folks in North Carolina, they are often in places with elections this year. UNC is in Chapel Hill, that has an election this year. Duke and Central here in Durham have an election this year. UNCW, where we have a great presence, has an election this year. So developing those relationships, making sure that we have, again, access to those voters right now, this year, so that we don't wake up in November of 24 thinking we should have talked to them sooner, right? We're starting that right now. And then, as You Can Vote always does, we're going to educate and register voters and use GOTV tactics for the municipal elections. So phone banking, that'll be coming, right? We will be talking to voters and helping them make their GOTV plans. The first election in 2023 is in September. So we got a little bit of time, but we will be having GOTV conversations and doing that outreach this fall. Also at You Can Vote, we are actively fundraising. We want to hire more people. We are looking to double our impact in 2024. And so we certainly would appreciate your help with our fundraising efforts. That'll just be something else to watch all year, right? Everything that we do as a nonpartisan nonprofit group, but we are a nonprofit. So we would love your support. And we do have a full-time development director who's going to be helping us make sure that we can support the work that we want to do and double our impact in 2024. That's already started now. We're hiring more folks. We have our Civics Fellow application that just went live. And that'll just be a continuing part of 23 as we go into 24. All right, so briefly, I'm going to talk about the elections that we're going to see this fall. It is a municipal year. So this is when we vote on mayors and town councils or city councils. One thing to keep in mind, and I love that Jen mentioned this for young people being excited about city council races, that's what we have on the ballot this fall. A great thing about North Carolina local elections is that they're close. And so we can often make the connection of, just like showing this photo, we picked this on purpose because you see there's 5 people here. In 2019, there was a Wilmington City Council race decided by 5 votes. That's how many people are right here on this photo. That's more than, I don't know how many people are in here now, but however many of us are on this call can swing an election, can sway an election. And so that goes into our talking points and how we message why elections, local elections are so important because they are incredibly close. We also had 8 races in 2019 that were decided by 2 votes. We had 5 races decided by 1 vote and 2 tied elections, meaning they had to flip a coin to decide who the next mayor is going to be. So keep that in mind when we're preparing for the fall and the municipal elections. These are not, won by a million votes or even hundreds of votes sometimes. These can be a handful of votes or maybe a dozen or 5 votes can change that outcome. So what are we facing? What are we looking forward to? We got the school board election this year. In some places, the school boards can vote on building new schools or where the new schools are located. If you live in North Carolina, which most of you do, you've seen the expansive growth that we see in so many places. And with more population often comes more schools. School boards get to choose where those go. They also decide on district lines. They get to decide which students go to which schools. That is a local decision. School boards decide the student discipline policy. That means how and where to use school resource officers. They also can hire and fire superintendents. School boards can fund and decide to pay for additional roles. This has probably come up in your local community. School boards have been making a lot of news recently with the decisions they're making, whether to fund or not. For additional nurses, special education teachers, bus drivers, cafeteria staff. That again is a budget line item that's being decided right now this summer. And the folks who make that decision for the schools are on your school board. They also can update existing equipment and think about renovating schools that already exist so that they get to make that decision. Another race on the ballot this fall in 2023 is mayors and city councils. So most of the places that vote, or all the places that vote, have these elections. And these are making decisions that impact you oftentimes more than the governor or the president, right? These are very local decisions, and they get to have the deciding outcome. So city councils can adopt non-discrimination policies that can offer more protection for LGBTQ people or not. They can vote to permanently remove statues from city grounds. They can create a participatory budget process so voters get to pick firsthand. That has happened here in Durham for a couple years, and it is always a popular participatory process. City councils get to adopt local plans for more green spaces, funding city parks, if they want to add more bike lanes or safety for bike lanes. Those are all decided on a local level. City councils can adopt developmental plans that include or not affordable housing units, including new construction and repairs on public housing. This has come up many times in many of our communities. We saw a lot of movement both ways for affordable housing in 2019 and 21. I expect it'll be a hot topic again this year as well. City councils can also create local jobs. So they get to determine the number of police officers and alternative community safety programs. So again, one thing that Gloria mentioned was that as folks are released from jail and prison, there are often, or not, depending on where you live, community safety programs offered. That means that there are job opportunities developed and supported by the city council, or your city, which is funded by the city council. So that's another power of that office. And this is part of our What's on the Ballot resource that you might look familiar to you. These will be on our clipboard soon. The reason that it's important to know some of the background of the individual decisions that city councils make is because you know that the education of talking about what's on the ballot is often what moves people from not caring or being a little bit less interested to really wanting to register and vote this fall. Because these hyper local decisions do impact every single one of us. And it can be we can feel very disconnected from Washington, D.C. in a different place, in a big city that feels far away. Our city councils, our mayors, our school board members, these are folks who live in our neighborhoods. These are folks who go to our same grocery store. These are folks who have kids in the same places we have kids. These are local leaders, and we get to have a say of who is in charge this fall. Quick snapshot here of 24. This is coming up. The What's on the Ballot tool will be on the clipboard soon. But the one thing I hope you see here is a lot is coming up in 2024. Yes, it's a presidential year, and yes, that's going to get a lot of attention. But don't forget that the entire North Carolina Council of State is up next year, our entire General Assembly, our entire U.S. House of Representatives. There's a lot of decisions, a lot of power coming up next year on the state and federal level. And so as we talk to folks who don't live in a municipality and who won't get to vote this year, this is the conversation that you can include. This is part of the conversation you can have. And thinking about what matters to you, that's related to what's on the ballot. So if you're interested in the economy and jobs, you're going to want to know who's your U.S. congressperson, right? You're going to want to know who's in the General Assembly. Those decisions that are going to be made based on who's elected next year are going to be part of the conversations with everyone, because a lot of folks get to vote this fall in 23 with the municipals, but everybody that we talk to gets to vote next year in 24. And this is a small snapshot of the offices that we'll see in 2024. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Kate actually to talk about flexing our YCV muscle.
So yeah, we're sitting here at the YCV HQ, changing places, Caitlin and I. So flexing our YCV muscle, as Caitlin just mentioned, we have muscle memory on rapid changes to elections here in North Carolina. So right now, after everything you've heard and using all the data, we know we need to be laser focused on systematically helping young people learn to vote and making sure that those votes count. But the great news is that we know how to do this. This is what we've been working on since our beginning. So we know that folks need accurate, complete registration forms turned in on time, and accuracy is key. The devil is in the details. So we are going to be training folks to make sure that those are done correctly by campus. You got to know the 3 ways to vote and what the rules are for each one of them. With students and young people, the best option is really where they're going to be at election time. Mailing absentee ballots back and forth, there's a lot of drop off on non-accepted ballots. The number one way to make your vote count is to go to early voting. So we have to have these conversations thinking about, yes, you can register and vote at your campus if you choose. If you choose to vote from your previous location, that's going to be a lot of extra steps, a lot of barriers, and it's more likely to not count. But of course, it is the voter's choice. we are going to help students make a plan, and we're going to follow up with reminders, and we're going to work with campuses to make this happen. And we have to train leaders and assist them in getting the job done and growing their local skills and muscle memory of how to make voters. So that is what we're focusing on. And so our North Carolina Civics Fellows Program, applications are out now. Caitlin, if you can put the URL in the chat for folks to go learn about, sign up. We're really interested in students who want to work the entire school year. Of course, we're going to take a little break for the holidays. We know students have spring break and different calendars. We will work with that, but there's 2 election cycles in a lot of our counties with campuses, both fall and the primary in the spring. And so there's a lot of opportunity to grow and do some really great work on your campus, and learn from our team, work with our campus coordinators, and you know, a lot of our fellows have gone on to become paid staff. So it's a really great opportunity, and everybody looks great in orange. Another thing we're doing, Jen, is organizing some focus groups to talk to college students who voted in 22, so we can learn from them. What motivated them? How did they get the information? What would have been more helpful? It's all about making voting easier for our newest voters, so there are less barriers to entry for them. So if you want to help collaborate on this campus, I saw a lot of campus folks in the chat. Contact Jennifer at youcanvote.org, and we'll get a little group together. Doesn't have to be a lot. We can buy pizza. We just want to talk to folks and learn to help make our outreach even more successful and effective. So we have a lot of could-be challenges coming up that we're facing, and one of them is malaise. North Carolina voters, as y'all are pretty familiar with, we're in a cycle of whiplash. We've had changes to maps for our legislature, for our Congress. We've had rules on again, off again, photo ID rules, constitutional amendments. So, you know, this is going to impact voters' temperature as well. There's no US Senate race this coming cycle in 2024. And so the presidential race is going to get the most attention. And then, you know, the governor's race will be a big deal because the governor's race is going to be open. So this is why we have to train with so much detail and precision. We can't just say everything that we're feeling because we don't want to cause harm. And so we take it very seriously. We want to be on message. We can't be alarmist, even though it's alarming what we're probably facing. So we just have to stay on message and on point so that we are not causing undue anxiety that could lead to people kind of checking out. We admit right now that we just have to embrace the chaos that's going to be in front of us. Like I said, we have the muscle memory to do this and to move quickly and to trust that you know, we have a solid team and solid partners that we are going to get the word out when things change. We're ready. We are ready and prepping to train and retrain again, all staff, all volunteers, all of our partners, so that we are empowering folks instead of doing harm. Accurate voter registration forms. And we're ensuring that our rapid response tools and messaging is ready for dissemination quickly and timely. And the one thing that we just have to avoid is confusing voters and volunteers. A lot of people are confused. There's been a lot of changes. You might have heard one news story about one thing, but then that changed. It flipped back and forth. So we have to just really keep it simple right now and just getting people registered at their current location and getting them to the polls. That's really what we have to do. That is our focus, and that is our lane. And we know that that will be effective in the long run. So some of the actions that you can take right now is just staying engaged. You know, follow our social media at You Can Vote NC. Make sure you're on our weekly Wednesday e-news. We don't try to spam. We're just keeping folks up to date and kind of what's happening and action points, how you can get involved. And when things change, that's how we'll get the word out. Get trained, spread the word, ask others to stay informed and to join you in this. We need to let folks know our resources. We need to build now. Getting perfect at voter registration and getting perfect at approaching voters and getting them to want to register and learn what's on the ballot. That is our foundation for when new things get added, because that is going to be a whole nother layer of training on how to navigate if we have photo ID. That's a complex conversation and you have to get that right. So we're getting perfect at our forms and our approach with voters, growing those skills so that when we layer in, it won't be as overwhelming. We need support to sustain and spread the word about our civic fellows and our organizer positions. Like Caitlin said, we are a nonprofit 501c3 tax deductible organization, and we get a lot of support from our communities. So please, if you have the ability to share this or share the fellowship opportunity, that will be very helpful. And then, just getting local. Have us come speak to your local group. Have us, I'm sure they will learn something. We have our Activate program, the high school page. You can share that with educators. Make sure that they know that we can take a classroom period for them when they can get a work session, because we're going to be teaching curriculum that ties to what they have to, their teaching standards, and gets the students ready to vote. And follow your local board of elections if you're inspired. Follow your city and council budget process. Really get local, because all change is made at home. And I just want to put a special plug in. We got to all dig deep to spread hope right now, because it can be overwhelming. The news is crazy. We're in this wild time for democracy and representation. So if you have hope and you have strength, use it and share it. We don't want people feeling down, because we the people have a lot of power and we can use it if we all come together, and use positive language as well. There's a lot of negative news out there, but when we talk to voters, you have to have a positive, welcoming, inclusive message. And most of all, do no harm. Things are going to change. You're going to have to look at the dates on materials, on the rules, because if you share old information, that could be detrimental to voters. So if eligibility changes, if the rules change, we have to make sure the latest and greatest materials get out. So that's why we're not distributing huge batches of current rules right now, because we expect things to change. So do no harm, spread hope, stay positive, and know that we are much stronger together.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. We are wearing our Carolina blue for later at 6:30, but everyone looks good in orange. So thank you so much for spending time with us today. And we would love to see you soon at a training or at an event. We will need all of you and appreciate all of you and your energy to get us through to prepare for next year.